Welcome back to Everyday Nuggets, where we'll explore something that periodically dominates American news cycles, but often remains poorly understood: government shutdowns. If you've ever wondered what exactly happens when we hear the government is shutting down on the news, you're in the right place. Let's dive into this uniquely American political phenomenon. At its core, a government shutdown occurs when Congress fails to pass funding legislation to finance federal government operations and agencies. The United States federal government operates on an annual budget cycle that begins October 1st and runs through September 30th of the following year. This is known as the fiscal year. Unlike many other democracies, the American system doesn't automatically trigger new elections when a budget fails to pass. Instead, when funding expires, non-essential government functions stop. It's like if your household budget ran out and you had to decide which bills to pay and which to put on hold. To keep the government running, Congress must pass appropriations bills, legislation that authorizes the government to spend money on specific programs and agencies. If these bills aren't passed and signed by the president before the deadline, we enter shutdown territory. Contrary to what the dramatic term government shutdown might suggest, the entire federal government's operations don't grind to a halt. Government functions are divided into essential and non-essential operations. Essential services continue functioning even during a shutdown. These include national security operations, border protection, air traffic control, law enforcement, power grid maintenance, emergency medical care. However, non-essential federal employees, which can number in the hundreds of thousands, are furloughed, meaning they're sent home without pay until funding resumes. Museums close. National parks shut their gates. Passport processing slows to a crawl. Research projects pause. Even tax refunds can be delayed during extended shutdowns. The most immediate and visible impact falls on federal workers. The 2025 shutdown, which lasted a record 43 days, left nearly 670,000 furloughed and 730,000 working employees without paychecks. The previous record was held by the 2018 to 2019 shutdown, which lasted 35 days. In both cases, employees in critical roles, including air traffic controllers, border patrol agents, and law enforcement personnel, were forced to work without compensation, resulting in severe financial hardship. Many reported skipping meals, delaying medical care, missing mortgage payments, or seeking temporary jobs to make ends meet. While Congress typically approves back pay once the shutdown ends, contractors often receive no such compensation for lost time. The effects ripple beyond government employees. Small businesses near federal buildings lose customers. National parks close, hurting tourism-dependent communities. Government services that Americans rely on daily, from food safety inspections to some environmental monitoring, are reduced or halted entirely. Government shutdowns don't just happen by accident. They're typically the result of political standoffs between Congress and the White House, or between the two chambers of Congress when controlled by different parties. Budget negotiations often become leverage points for partisan policy disputes entirely unrelated to government funding. A party might refuse to approve funding unless its opponents agree to policy concessions, essentially saying, "Meet our demands, or we'll let the government shut down." While the first technical shutdown under current budget rules occurred in 1981 under President Reagan, lasting just one day, the first truly significant modern shutdown took place in 1995 to 1996 under President Clinton, lasting 21 days as Republicans demanded budget cuts. More recently, shutdowns have centered on healthcare policy, immigration issues, and disputes over funding for the border wall. What makes shutdowns particularly tricky is that they create a game of political chicken. Both sides calculate whether the public will blame them or their opponents for the disruption. The party that faces more public pressure typically concedes first. Beyond the human toll, shutdowns extract a significant economic price. The Congressional Budget Office estimated that the 2018 to 2019 shutdown reduced GDP by $11 billion, with approximately $3 billion lost permanently. Government contractors lose business, consumer confidence declines, and economic uncertainty increases. These costs accumulate quickly. During shutdowns, the government can't issue specific permits and licenses, delaying business activities. Tourism suffers when national attractions close, and the inefficiency of ramping government operations down and then back up again wastes taxpayer resources. Perhaps most concerning is how shutdowns affect the government's ability to recruit and retain talented employees. Repeated funding crises make federal employment less appealing, potentially reducing the quality of public services long after a shutdown ends. You might wonder why other democracies don't experience government shutdowns. The answer lies in different constitutional structures. In parliamentary systems, such as those in the United Kingdom and Canada, failure to pass a budget typically triggers a vote of no confidence and new elections. This creates more substantial incentives to avoid budget impasses. The American system, with its separate executive and legislative branches, allows for divided government, where different parties control different branches. This separation of powers, while providing essential checks and balances, creates more opportunities for budgetary standoffs. To avoid shutdowns, Congress often passes continuing resolutions, CRs, temporary funding measures that maintain government operations at current levels for a specified period. While continuing resolutions prevent immediate shutdowns, they create their own problems by freezing funding levels and preventing agencies from starting new initiatives. Some policy experts have proposed automatic continuing resolutions that would take effect when budgets expire, thereby eliminating shutdowns entirely. Others argue this would remove the pressure that sometimes forces compromise on complex fiscal issues. As Americans, we face a question: are government shutdowns an acceptable feature of our political system? They've become more frequent in recent decades, suggesting they're now viewed as a standard political tactic rather than a rare breakdown in governance. Some reforms could reduce shutdown frequency, including changes to congressional budget procedures and the implementation of automatic funding extensions. However, shutdowns ultimately reflect deeper polarization in American politics. When compromise itself becomes politically toxic, finding agreement on complex budget matters becomes increasingly tricky. What's certain is that government shutdowns impact real lives, from the federal workers living paycheck to paycheck to citizens relying on government services. Understanding how and why they happen is the first step toward evaluating whether this is how we want our government to function. So the next time you hear about a looming government shutdown, you'll understand what's really at stake, not just political points, but the functioning of services that touch millions of American lives every day. Thank you for watching another episode of Everyday Nuggets. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more videos. If you have suggestions for other everyday things you'd like to know about, please leave them in the comments below. Stay curious.